Hello, everyone. Welcome to my inaugural episode of Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tad, and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm an astrologer and philosopher. I work with people around the world through consultations as well as teaching and lectures. And throughout these various episodes, we'll see how many this ends up being. I'm hoping it's weekly. I will be discussing a variety of things. I'll talk about some of the more significant astrological events that are happening at a given time and using story to understand them, whether that's mythology or contemporary literature, to help you understand the astrology of the moment and how you can take advantage of the times that we are living in and make the most of the opportunities presented to us, as well as to be aware of times that are more challenging and not to cause concern, but rather to be forewarned is to be forearmed, right? And that when you know that things could be a little more dicey, like if it's a time of Mercury in retrograde, how to prepare for that rather than be blindsided by it, and how to take advantage of times of challenge so that they are opportunities for growth and expansion and self-exploration. So throughout these shows, we'll take a variety of journeys. For this first one, it will be rather brief and really just talking a little bit about the astrology of the moment and how to take advantage of the full moon that will be tomorrow. So today is April 15th, 2022, and tomorrow, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States, there will be the exact full moon. And we get full moons every 28 days, right? There's a lunar cycle that's about what it breaks down to. And so each full moon is an opportunity, because the moon is in its most illuminated state. It is a time of completion and release as we prepare globally even for that waning time of the moon, where the moon becomes less and less visible up until 2 weeks from now when we have the new moon. And so during the time of the full moon, that is why we often find ourselves to be more emotional, right? The moon governs our emotional experience of the world and our lived emotional experience in engaging with other people. And thus, when it is fully illuminated, then emotions are fully illuminated. Now, this particular full moon, because we are still in the time of Aries, is in Libra. And therefore, I think about it as theater gels, which really aren't used anymore. I date myself by talking about theater gels instead of, I'm sure today, it's all just computers that change the color of a light that's shining on stage. But when I was in high school, right, you'd put different pieces of plastic on different lights to change the color that was projected onto stage. And so that's sort of how I think about the full moon and the given sign that it's, or the moon in general and the sign that it's in. So the moon, regardless of phase, is how we experience emotions and our emotional lived experience of the world. Then, like the theater gel being superimposed upon that emotional experience, we have the sign, the astrological sign that it's in. So the full moon for tomorrow is in Libra, and Libra governs balance and equanimity and fairness and is tied to partnership and romance. And not just romantic partnership, but businesses, close friends, any significant one-on-one relationship. And so for the most part, that is likely where we are to see the most sort of heightened emotional experience, is our engagement with other people, how fair or not we are finding those engagements or things in life in general, our emotional attachments to fairness, equanimity, justice is likely to be at a heightened experience over really today, tomorrow, and the next day, most acutely tomorrow, as that is the exact full moon. But really sort of day before or after, you can sort of bookend the full moon with those experiences. So as you go into these next few days, remembering or just having in the back of your mind this consciousness that emotions are likely to be heightened, and therefore you can temper your response as that, knowing that we're all going to be a little more emotional, then seeking that equanimity, right? Rather than focusing on or honing in on its lack of presence, working towards that, working towards making sure that everybody's emotional needs are being acknowledged, even if it's not able to be fully honored. You can still make it known that you're aware of it, even if you're not able to make the shift in doing things differently. There's a little bit of a dance. I hope that makes sense. With this particular one being in Libra, it can support you in a variety of ways. So for some of us, what we're needing to let go of is, because Libra being the scales, it's about balance, but it's often imbalanced in terms of how it manifests. So for some of us, what we're needing to let go of is where we are too controlling, where we are afraid to delegate, because if we give somebody else the work to do, it might not happen, and we trust ourselves to get it across the finish line, but might not trust other people. So for some of us, that Libran energy, the Libra full moon, is about letting go of where we feel the need to be in control of others in some ways, right? Or be the one in charge, be the one who's powerful. And not necessarily in a dictatorial or power over way that is toxic, but more just afraid to share the load. And so some of us are dealing with learning to trust other people to help. And conversely, other people are learning to take charge, right? And maybe they shrink in the face of an authority, and they easily give over their power. They easily give over their desire to be independent because of various events from earlier in their lives, or it's just not a skill they've cultivated yet. And so under this full moon, depending on what your tendency is, do you tend to give over your power, or do you tend to usurp other people's power? In either case, under this full moon, it is an opportunity to develop a healthier relationship with that sense of balance, right? And not just power, but just that interplay between give and take, right? Between assertive and directive energy. And are you overly directive or overly receptive, and needing to find greater balance between those two energies? Because neither is good or bad. They are both important and necessary, but ultimately, ideally, we want to have a healthy relationship between that receptive, directive energy, when to give, when to take, when to act, when to yield, right? And so under this full moon, it's your opportunity to let go of how this might manifest in an unhealthy way for you, and then work toward a healthier manifestation between that give and take, between that receptive, directive side that we all have, and yet you might only be, or primarily be cultivating or living into one side of that. So that can be one of the ways to work with this full moon. And to do so, I mean, it can be as simple as sort of making a list of where you want to have a healthier balance with this receptive, directive way of walking in the world, and getting clearer for yourself about where that plays out most frequently for you. And you can then, in part of the release of that, you can burn it if you live somewhere where that's possible. I know when I was living in apartments in Oakland, California, it was pretty difficult to do any sort of ritual where I could burn things because I didn't have a space to do it very safely. But if you have somewhere that's possible, make those lists and burn them and help that sort of release into the universe, into the air, and really part of that letting go. You can also just simply make the list and destroy it in another way that may feel safer if you live in an apartment where it's not a safe environment to sort of burn something, or do it in your kitchen sink. I think I did a couple times when I lived in Oakland. But just finding ways of letting go and releasing that. And you can even, tear it up, right? Can be a way of just shifting the energy and relationship with it. So try those things. And just being aware, as I said before, that because it's the full moon, emotions are likely to be heightened. And our desire for fairness and equanimity and justice and our emotional attachment to those things being greater throughout these next couple days because of the full moon being in Libra. So welcome again to my first little podcast here. As I go forward, we'll see how it evolves and have there be some more story or myth. But I wanted to get a little something out there, given that we've got this full moon coming up in about 24 hours. The exact full moon will be at 2:55 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States tomorrow, April 16th. So again, I welcome to Mythic Sky Storytime, and I hope you subscribe and continue to listen. Have a fantastic full moon.